My name is Arthur Aston. I was born in 1981 with a birth defect called Spina Bifida. I like to tell people that I am a son, a brother, an uncle, and a friend.
Okay.
So that's how I define myself. Spina Bifida is a part of who I am, but it does
Mm-hmm.
not define me as that's not uh, that's not who I am totally.
Mm-hmm.
It impacted my ability to walk. So spina
Okay.
bifida is one of the most common birth defects in the United States,
Mm.
and it's a result of the neural. It's a neural tube defect, so the spinal cord does not form properly uh, while the baby is in the mother's stomach.
Okay.
So I was born with a hole in my back at the lower part of my back, so it impacted my leg muscles.
Okay.
It feels great. Back in 1981, they didn't have the 3D ultrasounds
Okay.
that they have today. So my
Mm-hmm.
parents didn't know that I had spina bifida until I was born.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a surprise to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a surprise to the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Today, a mother can go in for a 3D ultrasound and they can notice the defect,
Wow.
and make the mother and the parents aware of, the defect before the child is born.
Okay.
So they didn't know they're still learning about spina bifida today. But
Mm-hmm.
in 1981, they said I wouldn't live past the age of 15. They said I would have multiple learning disabilities, that I wouldn't be able to learn in a regular classroom with other students who would be my age.
Mm.
So to know that I have beaten the 15-year life
Right.
expectancy by 20 years this year, I'll be 35.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's a great feeling, and also with the learning disabilities
Mm-hmm.
that they thought that I would have. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in psychological counseling, and I'm almost finished. I have to just complete the comprehensive exam and dissertation to have a PhD
Well,
in advanced
definitely.
studies in human behavior.
Wow. Well, definitely
So
congratulations.
thank you,
That's definitely an
and
accomplishment.
and and a big thing that I love, I am able to work for a nonprofit now
Mm-hmm.
called Build Jake's Place, and does involve our organization giving
Mm-hmm.
back to those who have disabilities. We create accessible playgrounds.
Right.
I joined them as a volunteer first in 2010. In
Mm.
2011, I was asked to be a board member for the nonprofit, and then in
Okay.
October of 2013, I was asked to be the executive director, and it was a great feeling because it's a
Mm.
very small organization that was started
Okay.
by a family in memory of their son and grandson who was born with half of a heart, and he passed away at the age of 2.5.
Oh my
So
goodness.
uh, this to have his father and his grandparents say, we want you to be a part of us as our executive director, to be
Right.
our person out in the front,
Mm.
to represent us when we have speaking engagements and when we're on the news and when we're in newspapers.
Yeah.
It was a very overwhelming experience at first because my
Mm.
first thought was, well, wait, that's what you all do now. So where are you going? Where are you going that you need me
Mm.
to do this now? So thankfully they weren't going anywhere, but it was the very and it was a kind of why me.
Mm.
I was in my early 30s and I'm like, there are many more experienced people out there, for this position, and
Mm.
they said, but you're the one that we want. So
Mm.
that was a very great and overwhelming feeling, but I've definitely eased into the position, and have definitely learned so much so far, and can't wait to see what else is to come. Yeah, the biggest challenges I think that I have faced with having spina bifida is all of the surgeries, the operations that I've had to have to help
Mm.
correct certain certain things. I've had leg muscles that have tightened. So they had to
Mhm.
cut my hamstring. I have a shunt
Mhm.
in the my right side of my head here that had to
Wow.
be revised a few times, and just different surgeries and the setbacks that have come with that because the surgery didn't go
Mhm.
as planned. So
Mhm.
that those setbacks have helped me face other challenges in the employment world when I was unable to find a job.
Mhm.
Just realizing, okay, I just have to hang in there a little longer.
Right.
Something will show up, something will work out for me, and
Exactly.
and I did hold out. And this Jake's Place job is where I feel my passion is in life, and I really feel I'm supposed to be, where I am right now. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. One thing that I did notice, I recognized it as I got older.
Mhm.
I was often the only one in my school, or one of very few people in my school who had a disability.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I graduated high school in the year 2000. So it's,
Mm.
not that long ago, but I was still one of the very few people who had a permanent disability. I used a wheelchair in high school.
Mhm.
Uh, so I think the big thing is for to not hide people who have disabilities. Let
Okay.
them be out in public more often. Let them, when you go to a sporting event with 30,000 people, you don't
Right.
necessarily see many people who have disabilities.
No, you do
So
not.
yeah, and one thing that I did for myself to start
Mhm.
that change, to make that change,
Okay.
I have a niece and a nephew who I see very often. They
Mhm.
understand my disability, but when I
Right.
picked my nephew up from school a couple of years ago, his
Mhm.
classmates, stared at me and kind of pointed and, walked off the curb because they were staring at me in my chair.
Oh my gosh.
Um, yeah, and then it hit me that if they don't have an interaction, if children especially don't have interaction with someone who has a disability, they
Mhm.
won't have a chance to ask questions.
Right.
They won't have a chance to, say, well, why do you need those crutches? Why do you need that wheelchair? Or
Mhm.
why do you
Right.
need the service dog?
Right.
so, so that's one thing that I noticed, and I utilized my network and my
Mhm.
friends who I talked about who were
Mhm.
teachers. And can I come in and talk to your classes?
Okay.
Can I come in and talk to your students and show them my wheelchair and give them a chance to hold my crutches and sit in my wheelchair,
Mhm.
tell them how a wheelchair works, and, have them ask me questions about my disability.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
uh, so I give
Mm.
give
Mhm.
students, and this is just here in New Jersey with my handful of friends who were teachers, but they've given me that opportunity to uh, reach a certain, an audience who may not have experience with someone who has a disability. Things that I like to focus on during those presentations are
Mhm.
uh, educating those. Educating about disabilities, to let them know what types of disabilities exist, and not
Right.
everything is visible. Just
Mhm.
because they're not in a wheelchair, or they don't use crutches or have a seeing eye dog or a hearing aid, doesn't mean they don't have a disability.
Mhm.
I also like to raise awareness to let them know that the numbers out there of people who have disabilities. In New
Yeah.
Jersey, one out of every 10 children has some type of disability. So it's very prevalent, and people out there with disabilities do exist.
Mhm.
And I also like to change the tone of conversation regarding those who have disabilities, because we focus on, oh, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't see, they
Mhm.
can't hear, they can't walk. But
Mhm.
here's what they can do. A
Right.
popular person that I use is Stevie Wonder. Yeah, he can't see, but he writes the best songs. He writes the best songs ever.
Yes.
So, and puts on a great concert. I like them to, realize that people with disabilities may have limitations, but they
Mhm.
also have the ability to contribute to society in many, many positive ways.
Yes. Yes, we definitely do.
So realizing I'm just one person, but I can start to make that change. Wow, I would first say, why not you? Um, everybody, every single person who is living on this earth has something to offer uh, the world, in their own special way, no matter how big or how small. Um, it is. It's very difficult living with a disability sometimes.
Yes.
Things are not as accessible as they should be in 2016. It's very difficult to get around. In a lot of places, a lot of big cities.
Right.
uh, but we all have the ability to make a change somehow, and just allow. I would tell people to allow yourself to have a bad day every now and then, because
Okay.
that's the reality of life. It's not, everything is not great all the time. You don't feel like smiling all the time, and just let that day happen, and allow yourself that time to experience your feelings, and whatever it is you are, whatever it is you're feeling, and just stick with it, though. Don't give up. It's hard, and it gets difficult sometimes, but it definitely gets better if you just hang in there a little bit.
Okay. All right.
I want people to know, not just about me, but about others who have disabilities, that we like to have fun. We like to laugh, and we like to go places, and we like to do things. I always like to tell people uh, to start a conversation with somebody who doesn't look like you.
Okay.
And that can be any way that you want to take it. I've met some of my best friends because they chose to talk to me because I didn't look like them.
Okay.
Everything, and I mean that we couldn't have been more opposite from, one of my best friends is brunette with green eyes, female, Caucasian female, so we couldn't be more opposite. But she decided to talk to me one day back in middle school, and we're still friends now. So it's really, just take the time to get to know somebody who doesn't look like you, and you never know what you may find. And one of the things I'm sure you will find is that you'll have a lot more in common than you have differences.